Hello and welcome to another episode of Anything But Authentic, where I make crazy unique food that is anything but authentic. On today's episode, I'm going to be making Mi Goreng lasagna. In case you guys don't know, Mi Goreng is basically an Indonesian fried noodle dish. And actually the concept of Mi Goreng lasagna has been shared around by Indomie itself. And when I saw it, I'm instantly curious. I mean, I'm the type of person that love to try anything new and unique. That's why I make this channel. That's why I make this series, because I love to try unique things. And when I saw Mi Goreng lasagna, I have to try it. Being a big fan of Mi Goreng itself, this is a no-brainer, right? So the thing is, the Mi Goreng lasagna that I'm making today is gonna be pretty different in a sense. I'm gonna try to make it with as few waste as possible. So what I'm gonna do is, instead of making it with the regular lasagna noodles and an actual Mi Goreng sauce, I'm gonna be using everything that's included in this instant packet noodle. It's gonna be a very exciting recipe. I love how it turned out, and I hope you do too. So let's get started. So what I have here is around a pound of shrimp. So the thing is, the lasagna is typically baked for a longer period of time, and I certainly don't like my shrimp overcooked. So what I'm gonna do now is just gonna start by just cooking the shrimp and adding it to the end. But I want to kind of lend the shrimp flavor to the oil and the sauce. So I'm gonna start with making the shrimp. I have a wok here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add around 2 tablespoons of oil to this wok and turn the heat on high and let it heat it all the way. All right, and then I'm just gonna add all the shrimp in and just let it cook for around 2 to 3 minutes. Again, I don't like it to be overcooked, so just a very nice sear is all that's needed. All right, so it's been around 3 minutes, so I'm just gonna take it out now. Again, shrimp cooks very fast, so that's all it needs. And I'm just gonna take it out and just add it towards the end. Then after, we want to add around 1.5 cups of shallots to it, along with around 5 cloves of garlic that I minced. Let it cook until the shallots are translucent. All right, this is looking good after around 4 minutes. So now I'm gonna add in around 1.5 cups of shredded cabbage. Typically, Mi Goreng comes with cabbage and shrimp and bean sprouts, so this is what I'm including. But if you have any other veggies that you like to include instead, like bok choy or Chinese cabbage, whichever, you know. Like I said, the world's your oyster, just make it how you want it to be. So I'm gonna stir fry this for 3 minutes and then we'll continue from there. So after 3 minutes, the cabbage is looking very nicely. So what I'm gonna add to it is the Mi Goreng seasoning. So now what this is basically, I'm using 10 packets of ramen, and this is the seasoning for those 10 packets that I literally just cut up and combine together into a paste like this. So what I'm gonna do is gonna add all those in, along with around 3.5 cups of water. Then just let it come to a boil. All right, so it's starting to come to a boil. So what I'm gonna do now is gonna add in the thickening slurry, which is basically just 1/2 cup of water and 2.5 tablespoons of potato starch. What I'm doing is I'm just gonna mix it around until all the potato starch is well mixed. Then just pour it in like so, along with 1.5 cups of bean sprouts. I'm just gonna mix it around and let it thicken up, which should take around a couple of minutes. All right, so the mixture is looking nice and thick. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just turn it off and set it aside while I move on to making the bechamel. Now we're gonna move on to making the bechamel. So what is a bechamel? Basically just a white sauce. I honestly recently just discovered making lasagna with the bechamel, and I just cannot go back. Look, I love ricotta, but I personally just prefer this more. If you like ricotta, feel free to make your lasagna with ricotta instead. But for this recipe, I'm just gonna do it with the bechamel. So I have a pan here, and I'm gonna add around 1/2 a stick of butter, which is around 4 tablespoons, and just let it melt. All right, the butter is all melted. Typically, this is when people would add in the flour, but since I love the taste of brown butter, so I'm just gonna brown it a little bit. All right, after around like a minute, the butter is lightly brown now, so I'm just gonna add around 4 tablespoons of flour. So same amount of flour and butter. And just mix around and cook until all the floury taste evaporates. All right, so after a minute, it smells really good, by the way. I'm gonna add in around 3.5 cups of milk. And then just let it come to a boil. And what's gonna happen is that the flour and milk mixture, which is called a roux, will start thickening the milk up. All right, so after it comes to a boil, it's starting to thicken up a little bit. So what you wanna do is add around 1 cup of parm, and it will definitely further thicken it up and lend the cheese flavor to the bechamel. All right, so now that the bechamel is nice and thickened up, what I'm gonna do is just gonna season it with a little bit of salt, maybe like 1 or 2 teaspoons. You don't need too much simply because there is already salt in the parm. And just a little bit of black pepper. 1 or 2 teaspoons again, not too much. And just mix it around. And then I'm just gonna turn it off and set it aside while I prepare for the instant ramen for the lasagna. All right, let's move on to making the noodles. Like I said in the beginning, the lasagna I'm making is pretty different in a sense that I'm not using the large lasagna noodles as the starch for it. Rather, I'm using the given instant noodles to replace that. So what I did here is basically I took out the instant noodles like so. And as you can see with the dry instant noodles, there is one side that is sealed and one that is open. So what is basically with the side that is not sealed, I basically just patiently separate it vertically like so. Like that. And basically what I'm trying to do is basically just split it and then cook it just so that the instant noodle itself retains the shape. And what I have here is around 10 packets of instant noodles. If you remember earlier when I made the sauce from the packets of 10 instant noodles. So again, the ratio is pretty consistent. Now what I'm doing is I'm just gonna cook these instant noodles one by one. It is pretty tedious, but again, my mission is to keep these intact. So what I'm gonna do now is I have a full pot of water. So I'm gonna turn it on and just let it come to a boil. And when it comes to a boil, I'm gonna cook this one by one with a spatula for around a minute. The reason that I'm doing it one by one for only around a minute is that the instant noodles only take around 3 or 4 minutes to fully cook. So what I'm doing is literally just hydrating it without giving it a chance to expand and kind of lose its shape. So I'm gonna wait for this to come to a boil and then we'll move on from there. All right, so this is now come to a rolling boil. So like I said, just one at a time with a spatula. Why spatula? Because the shape of the spatula is of a rectangle shape, so it can hold the shape of the instant noodle nicely. Again, just around a minute, 30 seconds to a minute, and then you see what it looks like. It's been around 45 seconds, so I'm just gonna take it out now. It's boiling pretty nicely. And just put it on here like that. So you kind of want this shape to stay as is. So I'm just gonna keep boiling it until I got everything and then we'll move on from there. All right, so all the noodles are cooked. As you can see, they're barely cooked for 30 seconds to a minute. Like I said, we just want to hydrate them a little bit and they'll cook when they're baked in the oven. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add around 1 tablespoon of oil, any neutral is fine, into the lasagna baking dish or casserole baking dish. Just kind of add it like so. And using a brush it around. And then what I usually like to do afterward is literally just use a piece of paper towels and just kind of soak up all the excess oil. We don't want it to be too oily. We just want it to kind of coat the baking dish just so that it doesn't stick. But you know, when things are too oily, it just doesn't taste good. And then I'm gonna add a little bit of the Mi Goreng sauce on the bottom. Just spread it around. Then slowly add the boiled packet ramen. Then afterward, I'm gonna add some of the bechamel on top. Just try your best to just, you know, spread it around like so. So what we're making here is 3 layers of lasagna. So make sure to use enough. Only use like 1/3 of the bechamel and 1/3 of the sauce. So we have enough for the rest of the layers. Then after the bechamel layer is done, let's add the Mi Goreng sauce layer on top. I think that's good enough. Then afterward, just repeat with the rest of the layers. All right, once all the layers are done, just finish it up with some more parm on top. And then we're good. Like so. Yeah. All right, so this is looking good. Now what I'm gonna do is gonna put this in the oven that I preheated at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And I'm gonna just let this bake for around 25 minutes. And then I'll see you in a little bit. All right, after around 25 minutes, I've taken the lasagna out and let it cool for around half an hour or so. So now what I'm gonna do is, I don't know if you remember, we made some shrimp in the beginning. So I'm just gonna place them individually onto the lasagna like so. All right, and then what I have here is around 2 stalks of green onions that I diced up. So just liberally sprinkle it on like so. And then just serve it up. All right, so it's now done. I basically just took out a slice and I'm pretty excited to try it because when I was testing it, I definitely fell in love with the taste. So hopefully the taste the second time around would be even better. So let's see. So as you can see, even though we cooked the noodles for a little bit, it definitely got cooked through when it's baked in the oven. So that's perfectly where I want it to be. And you definitely get that Mi Goreng taste along with the bechamel. So it's like a very creamy Mi Goreng that's just comforting, yet like a bit cheesy, a bit buttery. It's just wonderful. Hope you guys enjoy grubbing with me, Guber, and I hope to see you here next time on Anything But Authentic.